of his lyrics as it connected to concerns over these particular issues of guns, gangs, and violence in Toronto. So there's no doubt about it that as a gangsta rap artist, and I say that most genuinely, 50 Cent's marketing image and lyrics do revolve around images and content of gangs, drugs, violence, and urban crime. This is the environment that he comes from. He is a legitimate member of that kind of social context and experience, and that's what his music is ultimately derived from. As I mentioned, we were essentially silenced from participating in the public debate because of the international music industry machinery's requirement that messages and communication on this particular point all be consistent. So we unfortunately did not have an opportunity like this evening to participate in the public debate around this. Some other key facts here, just to give you some context about how important of an artist and how mainstream 50 Cent is, notwithstanding these particular controversial issues that I just raised. 50 Cent has major sponsorship deals with Reebok, Sony, Microsoft, and Coke. So if you can think of 4 larger household mainstream corporate names than those 4 that I just cited for you, you'd be hard-pressed. And so 50 Cent is someone who has engaged in large-scale business dealings as a representative, as a spokesperson, as a celebrity endorser of these particular companies. And then again, to give you some larger music industry context, the Massacre album, which I mentioned to you, sold 1.14 million albums. At this time was ranked number 1, was ranked this way in these countries simultaneously. Number 1 in the United States, number 1 in UK, number 1 in Canada, number 1 in Germany, number 2 in Australia, and number 4 in France. So then again, I turn to you in this circumstance with all of these issues. Again, we're about to vote. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done?
So there's the question again. You're the CEO of this music entertainment company. You have to make a decision, and you've got a minute to do it. Are you going to accept the contract or not? And we want you to vote. So you just push one of those buttons, depending on which of those answers you're looking for. Well, you'll just have to follow the discussion and see. You saw the tape.
I purposely stayed away from qualifying whether or not he's glorifying those issues. There's no doubt that that subject matter is at the core of what his lyrics are about, but I don't want to frame it in a way to say that he glorifies it, because I think that influences what's at issue here. Because other people would make a credible counter-argument that he's not glorifying, which would be in some way an endorsement of that message.
You've all voted. Let's see what you have decided. Basically the same, although you're moving toward that third of the choices. Very good. We're now going to move to the second phase of this particular discussion. We have 4 very qualified commentators who are going to join the debate. And they're going to set out various aspects of the issue and the circumstances surrounding it. And at the end of their presentations, you're going to make, at the end of each presentation, you're going to form judgments, again, with very little time to reflect, form judgments on what you've heard and come to a conclusion, again, on the basis of the presentation. Should the company accept the contract or should it not? And you'll have exactly the same set of questions. So we're going to ask you 3 questions at the end of the panelists' discussions. We have 4 panelists, as I mentioned. The first is James Keast, who is the editor of the music magazine called Exclaim, which is the largest magazine of its kind in Canada. the largest national music magazine, and is committed to finding new music and exposing it, making it available to, publicizing it, making it available to Canadian audiences. So James is going to lead off. He's going to be followed by Ronaldo Walcott, who's actually a graduate of York University, but now teaches at the Ontario Institute for Studies and Education at the University of Toronto, where he holds the Canada Research Chair in Social Justice and Cultural Studies. One of the interesting facts about Ronaldo is that he actually studied rap music or examined it in the course of his dissertation here at York, his PhD dissertation. So he's been examining issues surrounding rap music now since he received his PhD. The third presenter is Pat Bradshaw, who is a colleague of mine here at the Schulich School of Business. Pat's field is organizational behavior, and she'll develop her views based on her experiences with respect to this kind of music, and responses might be appropriate in that regard. And then the fourth presenter may surprise you a little. He's a colleague of mine at York University in the Department of Philosophy, and he's a Plato scholar. Gerard Nadaf is the former chair of the philosophy department and the former president of the Canadian Philosophical Association, and he's going to examine the issues that Neil was presented with through the eyes of Plato. So those are the four presenters, and they're going we're just going to move seamlessly. At the end of each presentation, you're going to be asked 3 questions, and you'll see what the questions are at the end of the first presentation. So James?
I just want to start by mentioning that I don't come from a business or an ethics background. I've worked as an editor of a music magazine for 12 years. So my intent tonight is to provide some context from the music industry overall to help contextualize an artist like 50 Cent. I wanted to start by citing some examples of violent and misogynist lyrics in other music genres to illustrate that these types of expressions are not by any means the exclusive domain of hip-hop, that country, metal, pop, dance music have all been used to express anger, frustration, fantasy as release valves, starting with what I would consider one of the most gangsta lyrics ever written, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die, Johnny Cash, 1957. But honestly, I found too many examples to be useful, whether it's the Dixie Chicks murder fantasy, Goodbye Earl, in which poor Earl is poisoned and wrapped in a tarp while the ladies go on a picnic, or Eric Clapton's I Shot the Sheriff, which was a #1 hit in 1974. Bob Marley's original, I'm certain, remains a staple amongst university students whose discovery of reggae has not gone past the Legend album. Yet, despite these themes of violence, no one tried to ban those albums, no one accuses those artists of hate crimes, or ties them to criminal activities. They are seen correctly as writers of fiction, storytellers, sculptors of the imagination, not documentarians. So what is the difference between I Shot the Sheriff and Fuck the Police? I believe that it's in the tension between the fiction and reality, between the hip-hop ethos of keeping it real and the exaggerated role-playing character studies that have always been amongst music's most potent lyrical devices. Scapegoating musicians for social ills isn't new. Metal particularly has long been a target for its so-called corrupting influence on young minds. But while metal bands truck in imagery and lyrics that are, at least to most discerning critics, cartoonishly over the top, the currency of hip-hop has always been its credibility, its legitimacy, its realness. From its inception, hip-hop has drawn from life. Its tales of urban decay, poverty, drugs, and crime resonated because they were rooted in reality. However exaggerated they were, that kernel of truth helped make hip-hop, in the words of Public Enemy frontman Chuck D, the black CNN. But even a so-called conscious group like Public Enemy employed exaggerated violent imagery to communicate their message. Their logo is a silhouetted figure in the crosshairs of a gun. Their army of security, clad in